Oh, watch out, socks. You're going to stay here? Welcome back, everyone. Here's Socks sitting with me. It's the 28th of December, so it's the middle of what we now call Twixtmas, and we're about to get ready for our little party around our house tonight that we have every year. We have done for the last 20 years, without the few years of the pandemic in between. But generally we get a bunch of people over, not too many, and have lots of music and snacks and wine and stuff, and it's a nice night. And Socks goes round and solemnly looks at everyone. Do I like you or not? Because he's got very decided views on friends. As Socks. I hope everyone's well and you're enjoying this wonderful space of time between Christmas and New Year. Here it's very foggy and misty, and that really suits this time, I think, as we go from one zone into another. I've been making plans. I've been writing my journal over Christmas. There's been no drawing, an awful lot of reading, and plans for what I'm going to do in January, which has been quite nice. It's nice when you can make plans at your leisure. It's the best time to do them, best way to do them. Anyway, I want to talk today about Cher. I spent the whole of Christmas week reading Cher's memoir, part 1, which I really love. Now, ghostwriters, do they get credited? Because clearly it's not all written by Cher. I don't think it tells us. I'm prepared to be corrected, but I don't think it credits its ghostwriters. At least on the copyright page. Tells you who took all the photos, all these smudgy snaps, as if that's more important. Acknowledgements. I've seen some terrible things recently with celebrities and kind of actors who we know didn't write their books, claiming credit for writing their books. Well, I'd love to just jump on the stage and say, I'm acting this, next time they do a show. I really think it should tell us on the front who wrote these books. Some of them are enjoyable. This one certainly is. Ghostwriters do a fantastic job, I think, on the whole, and they deserve crediting. So, publishing people, you are mis-selling us books in huge numbers and taking away from people who are proud to have written their own books. You're taking that time and space away from them, and you are doing us wrong. So I'm saying that to people in publishing and the publishing world. I don't think it's actually on. I don't think you can do this. And I think the Society of Authors and everybody else should be making a fuss about it, because this will sell really well. The ghostwriter does a great job of picking up Cher's profane, slangy, balls to the wall, which is the phrase she uses again and again, voice. The story itself is a great one, I think. In the first 100 pages, where you learn about her mother's family and her grandmother's family and the way these kids are sent from pillar to post across the country, living in poverty and being treated really badly by fathers who are heroin addicts and thieves and gypsies and tramps, like in the song. Fathers who set fire to their houses or try to gas their children or just abandon them, and kids who are placed in the care of other relatives and nuns and all sorts. All of that stuff is fascinating, and it makes you feel like you're looking back more than 100 years. And then we get Cher growing up in the 50s and into the 60s. And all of that stuff's fascinating as well. To live in Hollywood, so she was aware of stars around her all the time. Even when her family had nothing, they were in the neighbourhood. Of course, when Americans talk about being poor, it's quite different to when British people talk about being poor. When people talk in America about having a small house, it's not what we expect in Britain. And she lucks out and becomes famous overnight. And all of those bits are amazing as well. When she's first with Sonny and they record songs almost by accident, he finds out she can sing because he hears her through the wall as she's making the beds. She's a kind of slave, a 16-year-old slave living in his apartment. And then he finds out she can sing. And he just happens to be mates with Phil Spector. And they just happen to be going to Phil Spector's studios and end up singing backing vocals for the Ronettes and the Christmas album. So the first thing she records just about is a classic. And there's a lot of that, bumping into people, having these amazing times, like bumping into Warren Beatty and being picked up by him. There's some bad faith involved, I suppose, in that all these things just happen to her. It's a bit like an 18th century novel like Pamela or something, where the heroine just wanders through this landscape and has these adventures happen to her, the machinations of the men around her. And it was a bit like that, perhaps. I mean, the stuff she ends up suffering at the hands of Sonny is very odd. You know, doing all this work and clearly being the reason he was successful. He used her to get into the charts. But she let herself be treated like a fool. She had no idea what she was signing up to. She never read her contracts. She didn't know what was being... She trusted him, basically. And she was very young, I suppose. There's a great sequence where they go to the UK and they have nothing, but suddenly they go to number one in 2 countries with I Got You, Babe. And she's on top of the pops and she's meeting everybody and buying things on Carnaby Street and the King's Road, and then going back to America and finding themselves hugely famous and they think hugely rich, and then losing it all and then having to get it all back again as they become TV stars in the late 60s and 70s. The last half of the book is about the 70s mostly, and hanging on to fame as she and Sonny split up and she goes off with different men, different relationships, different houses, different TV shows. And the book loses sight of what it's all about. What is she looking for? What is she after? And like many biographies of famous people, celebrities, pop stars usually, the second half of the story is often about how they cling on to the fame that they only ever got accidentally in the first place. And she acknowledges it, like most of these people do, that talent got her so far, but actually it was just massive, massive luck. And that loads of people who do things better than her never got that chance. The struggle to hang on to fame is interesting in itself as a story, as a mechanism. But the character doesn't seem to... Our protagonist doesn't seem to learn anything much, really. It's just about how to become more glamorous, to be known by more people and to stay in the public eye. The same story of biographies I've read of, you know, Marlene Dietrich or anybody in that famous over those in the 20th century and beyond. That's the story of it. They look out, they get lucky, and then it's about how you keep it. The second volume promises to be about her film career, so it's a second act and a second chance, and that'll be interesting too. I sound as if I'm down on it. I'm not. I've read this every day all over Christmas, and I wouldn't have read it had I not enjoyed it a lot. And some of the anecdotes are really amazing. And the people she knew and bumped into and had to look after in this kind of slightly mother hen way. When John Lennon and Harry Nilsson are misbehaving at the Playboy Mansion, stripping off and jumping in the pond, she has to look after them. She is always the kind of down-to-earth mother hen character who can cut through the crap with her with a dose of reality. And you think that's a bit of a pose as well. she plays down the kind of more diva-ish aspects. You glimpse it now and then. She kicks off when things aren't exactly how she would like them to be. Yeah, it's really interesting, I think, and not hilarious. That surprised me. I thought you'd have more of a sense of humour. And maybe that's something we lose in the ghostwriting of things. You don't get the natural humour of the person coming through. And I go back to the Elton John memoir, which I think was probably written by him and tidied up by editors. Maybe it was spoken by him, maybe it was tapes. But his own sense of humour does come through. And it's a very self-deprecating sense of humour. Cher's is a bit more like, fuck you, I was always right, which is amusing, but you wouldn't want to be trapped in a room with her for too long, which is a great measure, isn't it, of people. And it's being trapped with the people is being different to reading their book. The book you can pick up and put down. Being in a room with people is something different. So I'm looking forward to volume 2. I think it has to be on my 5-star pile for the year, though. Maybe that would go down in retrospect. Maybe. At the moment, though, it's 5-star. I'm going to show you my pile. I've got a pile of Christmas books, all presents. I did quite well. I got all sorts of presents, but I got these books. One of them is a present to myself, and it arrived on, I think, Christmas Eve or thereabouts. Doctor Who, The Six Doctors. This is a charity book from Obverse. They've got a series that they do for charity. I think raising money for food banks. And it's a hypothetical other universe series that they occasionally do with a mystery author. This time writing as Robin Bland, which Doctor Who fans will recognise as a sobriquet. And this is an alternate universe version of The Five Doctors. I think based on the treatment that Robert Holmes wrote when he was asked to write The Five Doctors in the first place before handing it over to Terence Dicks. This is, I'm halfway through. I picked this up straight after Cher. And it's a perfect pastiche, a gleeful pastiche of the Target books of old. It skips through the story so far anyway. It hasn't got weighed down by this huge baggage of characters and things that you want to see included, the monsters and the villains. And there's an astonishing scene that I can't believe nobody has ever written before. I'll give a slight spoiler space warning to say that there's a scene in which Davros, the creator of the Daleks, is kidnapped by Cybermen and lifted out of his chair forcibly and cybertized, if that's the verb, which I'd love to see on TV. I can't believe that's never been done. Everybody's captured beautifully, and which is no mean feat, let me tell you. I know this from my own experience. It takes an awful lot of skill and knowledge to capture all these characters and put them in one place. So I'm really enjoying this. It's a proper Doctor Who adventure. Come on, Socks. And one that I just imagine myself in 1983, if this could suddenly kind of whiz its way down the time vortex and find me at the age of 14, I'd have been so excited about this, even more excited than I am now. But that year of the Five Doctors, or the year after, if this had turned up out of nowhere, because this is what it's written as if it was produced in 83, 84, which is, it's a happy time to look back on. Okay, what else? Doctor Who's been good this Christmas. The Doctor Who special on Christmas Day was marvellous, intricate, compassionate, twisty, and all the clues there. Everything you needed to know was there, and it went through very cleverly. How clever to have things like chasers and dinosaurs and all that stuff going on, and the sentimentality, and to introduce 2 or 3 new characters who will there, within that space of time, break your heart. How clever to do all of that inside an hour. the kind of thing that will reward rewatching, which is, that's what Doctor Who's about. We've watched less TV this year, which is good, I think. Christmas has been better with less TV, with choosing things carefully. So Doctor Who on Christmas night was kind of it. In the morning, I watched, it's in the background playing, I rewatched Disney's Fantasia, which I haven't seen for years. And last night we had the Beetlejuice sequel and we had the Stone tape, both presents. The new Blu-ray edition of Nigel Neal's The Stone tape. So that was a great night of spooky TV. But yeah, less TV generally. Right, the rest of these books. The Sea Maiden's Odyssey by Burley Doherty and Tamsin Roswell doing illustrations. This is a present from my friend Nick, who knows so much about kids' books, and especially contemporary kids' books and illustrated books. And this is a beautiful signed edition, signed by the illustrator, of a kind of modern fairy tale. And I think it's published by Walker Books. Is that right? No, it's not. It's UClan, sorry. UClan are amazing. They created themselves. They were attached to a course at the University of Central Lancashire and started by a friend of mine who's since left the place. And it's carried on. It began as a course in publishing, and people were going to learn about it by doing it. And it's become its own publishing house, doing its own thing. It's incredible. I went once to do a talk years ago now, maybe even almost 10 years ago. And it's amazing to see how they've developed. This is a beautiful book. So that might be next on my pile. What else? Oh, I've read this already, The Skull. This came from my friend George. John Classen's book, The Skull. He wrote and illustrated this picture book. And I read this on Boxing Day. And I'd had my eye on this. Actually, Nick, who I just talked about, had recommended it online. And I like John Classen's books. I've read Skunk and Badger, which he illustrated. I'm waiting for the third volume of Skunk and Badger. I don't think it's arrived yet. This is lovely. It's adapted from a folk tale from Germany, a Tyrolean folk tale. He has a very interesting author's note about reading the tale in a collection in a library when he was waiting to do an event, and then forgetting about it and remembering it, and writing to the library afterwards saying, can you find me this story that I was reading? And when he was reunited with the story, it was quite different to how he remembered. And he talks about how folktales work in that same way, that our individual remembered versions of stories misremembering is a creative act, is what he's saying. And that's what happens to folktales down the ages. It's the kind of serial misremembering that goes on culturally. And I found that fascinating. This is from my friend Carol. It's a whodunit. Peter Swanson, who I've never read, and I read the first chapter straight away on Christmas morning. It sounds fascinating. A kind of proper old-fashioned mystery in the big house kind of book set at Christmas, the Christmas guest. And what else? This is from my friends Jamie and Kyle. Dream Dance, the art of Ed Emshwiller. This is a book I didn't know about at all. And Ed Emshwiller was an artist who did the covers for pulp, science fiction and mystery magazines. So much of the book is given over to reproductions of these marvellous covers. And what I always find is that it's almost better than reading the stories themselves, looking at the covers. They make me imagine what the stories could be. This links back to the folktale thing I was just saying. These are kind of misremembered versions of things. The versions you make up of other people's tales. Yeah, you can spend hours just looking at these. Although, having said that the covers are better, it does make me want to start just looking up to see if these things are available. I don't need another collecting passion at all. But look at these. I do have a couple of issues of these. My friend Darren gave me some. Yeah, fantasy and science fiction from the early 70s, I think. I think these are from the 70s, which is weird, isn't it? Because they look much older. We forget that 70s movies like Star Wars changed science fiction and moved it on elsewhere. And lastly, Queer as Folklore by Sasha Coward. Now, I'd seen this mentioned on social media. I think we have friends in common. And it just sounded fascinating. The idea of monsters and legends and myths underlying queer culture. It's a bit like the kind of queer outsider monster figure in horror movies that I read a lovely book about. Harry Benshoff, The Monster Queer, is a critical book about movies that I read maybe 20 years ago. And talking about what horror films in particular bring to queer culture. That there's a space, a almost unspoken, untalked about space in horror fiction that's always queer with a big Q. Anyway, this sounds really good fun. It's a chapter on pirates, I've just noticed, and witch hunts, demon twinks, big bad wolves. That's interesting. So it looks like something to the kind of thing I would become obsessed with for a while. So well done, David and Mark, for thinking of me when this came out, because it's a really good present. Thank you. So, Christmas books. I've actually read everything I planned to in December. I read my 6 planned Christmassy books leading up to Christmas. I read Cher through Christmas week, and now I've embarked upon my books that I got given at Christmas. So everything I planned to, I've read, but now I'm on with the surprise books that I had no idea about. So that's good. I'm not sure I'm going to get any time to read this afternoon. We have to go out and buy some wine. Come on, Socks, come and see everyone. Some wine and some more snacks. I'll let you know how our do goes tonight. I don't know if people in America or elsewhere in the world use the word do for party. It means a modest-sized party, which is what I hope tonight is going to be. Okay, goodbye. I will see you again quite soon, before the year is out. Goodbye.